All right, I'm going to go into another one that I've heard over and over again, and it's always applied to tithing. And I greatly, greatly despise that this verse is being talked about tithing. Because again, what's the context here, right? We're trying to get to the core point of what Paul's trying to say here. And I'm going to read it the way I've heard preachers say this at the pulpit or during tithing collection. Okay, I'm going to read it the way they read it. Hold on one
I
second.
can never find it.
No, the Galatians here. Galatians 6.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's James. We'll get to James right now.
Sorry.
Galatians
Sorry.
6. I'm going to read it the way they always read it. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, they will also reap. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And so these two verses are always read in line with tithing. Okay? They read Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, then they skip 8, and then they read 9. And I think it's partially intentional because what's being talked about here is not in the context of tithing.
Mm-mm.
And we have to be very careful not to apply these verses. There's plenty of other verses that can talk about giving to the church.
Mm-hmm.
But if your theology of tithing, of sowing and then reaping comes from these verses, it's improper context.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and read from verse 6 through verse 10 I have here.
Okay, so it says, let the one who is taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption. But the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith.
Boom. So what's the context here? The sowing of flesh, the reaping of flesh, the sowing of the Spirit, and the reaping of the Spirit. And the context here is not in giving. The context here is in carrying each other's burdens and to call out the sinning brother in gentleness. That's what verse 1 starts with.
Like even the title for it says, bear one another's burdens.
Right, and we have to be careful with titles. I'm not a big fan of titles because they're not spirit
but this
inspired.
one is
right?
actually pretty accurate.
So listen to what Galatians 6 verse 1 says. It says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. So the concept of the sowing and the reaping here is let the one who's teaching the word share in the sowing and reaping of spiritual things. Not in the financial tithing. That's not saying that if you tithe 10% of your tithe, that you'll reap 10% more. That's not what's being, and it's not even teaching here that if you sow 10% into the kingdom, that you'll reap gospel goodness or spiritual goodness here. That's not the context either. The context here is if you are living in the flesh, eventually you're going to reap corruption of the flesh. So what is it that you're giving your life over to? The flesh or the spirit? Right? That's the context. So when you hear someone tell you that this is a tithing verse, think in the back of your mind, context is king. This is not a tithing text.